I want to get into a rant here in a few minutes about making money off disaster, how it happened in Nazi Germany, how it's happening here. Godwin's law notwithstanding. But first, Jeff Cohen is with us, media critic and lecturer, founding director of the Park Center for Independent Media at the Ithaca College, where he's an associate professor of journalism. His most recent book, Cable News Confidential, My Misadventures in Corporate Media. He was the senior producer of MSNBC's Phil Donahue program, founder of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, FAIR, co-founder of RootsAction.org. His website is jeffcohen.com. There's a new movie out, allgovernmentslie.com. You can check it out. And Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you. It's jeffcohen.org.
.org. Thank you very much. And in fact, that's what it says right here, jeffcohen.org, if I said it wrong. The Democratic Party did this Democratic autopsy report that you edited. Do I have that right?
I edited this report that people can find. It's 33 pages, published a year after the election. It's called democraticautopsy.org. And the reason a bunch of Democratic Party and progressive activists did the autopsy themselves, Tom, is because the Democratic Party leadership refused to do one.
Okay.
So it's an independent research paper on why did the disaster of Trump defeating Hillary, why did it happen, and what can be changed so it doesn't happen again.
So what are the conclusions that you all came to?
Two areas. One is the Democratic Party has to change its policy orientation, and then the second area is the Democratic Party has to change the way it operates, the way it does voter outreach, the way it campaigns.
Okay.
So,
Take the first one first.
Yeah, the listeners of your show know what the policy agenda would be. I hear you talking about it week after week. A policy agenda that's popular with the vast majority of people, not just Democrats. It's raising the raising the minimum wage, having health care for all, Medicare for all, enhanced Medicare for all, having free public college education, loosening and relieving people of college debt, creating green jobs programs. The policy agenda, we know that a progressive agenda is the only way to defeat a populist charlatan like Trump, and there are going to be populist charlatans like Trump coming year after year after year. And the only way you defeat a phony populist who tries to appeal to white working-class voters when he's got really policies that just are a giveaway to big corporations, the only way you can defeat that person in the policy front is with the full progressive populist agenda.
In other words, the only way to defeat a phony populist is with real populism.
Damn right. And that's what this autopsy, and believe me, I was an editor. It's a 33-page report. Anyone can read it at democraticautopsy.org. It lays this out with a lot of data and polling data and survey data. The second area, Tom, that needs to be changed is how the Democratic Party organizes, operates campaigns.
Okay.
What we found, I could summarize what they do wrong in an incredible quote from Senator Schumer, who is soon to be the Democratic Party leader in the Senate. In July of 2016, just 4 months before the disaster of Trump defeating Clinton, he said this. He said, "For every working-class Democrat that we lose in western Pennsylvania, we will pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and we can repeat that in Ohio, Illinois, and Pennsylvania," unquote.
Yeah, and Harry Truman famously said, when a voter is speaking directly to that, what you're talking about, Harry Truman, who himself could be accused of being a little too middle of the road, but nonetheless, said when the American voter is presented with a choice between a Republican or a Democrat who acts like a Republican, they will choose the real Republican every time.
Darn right. And so I mean, and when Schumer says, hey, we don't need the working class Democrats in western Pennsylvania, which is basically the Rust Belt, because we're going to pick up 2 moderate Republicans, that's how they spend in the suburbs of Philly. That's how they spent their money.
Well, this comes out of the theory. Al Fromm wrote a book about this, about how he and Bill Clinton basically put together this Democratic Leadership Council thing in 1991, the DLC, and explicitly they were going, and Thomas Frank, his book Listen Liberal, just really lays into this in great detail, as I'm sure you know. That explicitly because Reagan had been so successful in the 1980s and Reaganism in the 1990s had been so successful at destroying unions in the United States and putting them on the run so that unions could not be major political forces, sources of money basically for the Democratic Party, and things like so-called tort reform, limiting the amount that people could sue for, harming the trial lawyers, who were the other major source of revenue for the Democratic Party, that we've got to find a new source of income if we're going to run campaigns. Now, this was before the internet was a big thing, and you had to buy network television. And how do you come up with hundreds of millions of dollars to buy network television? Well, let's pick some industries, some clean industries that we can get into bed with, specifically banking and insurance and pharmaceuticals. And, these are companies that, are not controversial. People don't hate them. They're not associated with pollution. They're not associated with corruption. Let's throw our lot in with these companies. They'll give us big financial support, and we'll ride to the presidency. And it actually worked for Clinton in the 90s.
Yeah, it can't work anymore.
Well, and that's the point.
You're explaining why they have the moderate, vacillating, uninspiring political agenda. If you're going to keep getting your money from the donor class, these so-called clean industries, you can't take the positions that would allow you to compete with Trump, the actual progressive populist.
Right. You can't argue that the Postal Service should also become a bank for low-income people and do away with payday lending, if you're taking money from banks, for example.
No doubt. All right, so that's how they raise the money. And what the DemocraticAutopsy.org also talks about is how they spent the money. If you decide that you're going to go after allegedly moderate Republican voters in Philadelphia, if there are any left in the suburbs, that means that you're going to have these wealthy white people who run the DNC and ran the Hillary campaign. They hire other well-to-do white people to run ads aimed at the persuadables. What we argued in that in our Democratic Autopsy is the money should have been spent instead of spending millions of dollars to find a few moderate Republicans, if any of them still exist. What you should be spending your millions of dollars, and remember, Hillary totally outraised Donald Trump and had, by one report, 5 or 6 times as many staffers as Trump did. It's the way they spend the money. They should be spending it on mobilizing the base. They should be mobilizing African Americans and getting them to the polls, Latinos and getting them to the polls. They should be in every college town and getting young people, which is the most progressive demographic, to the polls. That's people 30 and under. But instead of spending money that way, the money, how consultants get paid. They get paid a percentage of the ads that they run.
Right.
So all the money goes into the ads.
And they weren't using cheap ads like you could find on Twitter and Facebook. They were, or email campaigns. They were buying television.
Right. So the Democratic Autopsy criticizes their lousy policy agenda, a corporate, mealy-mouthed policy agenda that didn't mobilize or enthuse voters. That's what Hillary failed to do in 2016. And then the way that the money is spent. There was a downturn in black turnout in 2016. It was even lower than the turnout for John Kerry among African Americans in 2004. There was a decline in Latino turnout, and many young people voted third party, and that has to do with lack of voter mobilization and lack of a progressive policy agenda that would get people under 30. They're by far.
All that said, though, Jeff, Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump.
Oh, I understand that, but it shouldn't have been close.
Right.
Again.
Yeah, it should have been an absolute blowout, and I think it would have been. And the good news here, Jeff, is from what I'm hearing, the Progressive Caucus is growing. The Progressive Caucus is starting to have an impact. You're seeing Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi on occasion picking up these talking points from the Progressive Caucus and going forward with them. I think it's slowly starting to sink in.
Well, the problem is...
And a lot of people are inserting themselves into the Democratic Party, a lot of progressives. Forgive my interrupting.
No doubt. Activism from the base is really helping, but keep in mind these corporate forces in the Democratic Party are in a war against the progressive base.
Yeah.
And that's being played out. If people are interested in that battle between the grassroots activist base of the Democratic Party and the corporate forces that, hell, they make money even if they win or lose elections, the best outlet for that is, besides Thom Hartmann, is the Intercept.com.
Right.
And they're covering this in race after race.
Yeah.
The most
and Lee Fong has done
race.
a great job, too.
Yeah.
Jeff, we're hitting the break here. We're out of time. Jeff Cohen, jeffcohen.org is the website, democraticautopsy.org. Thank you, Jeff.